Hi everybody, I'm Charlie. Welcome back to On Air, my Beatles collection. Today I'm going to show you a box set from the early 70s. This was a Japan-only box. It was from the famous record club. It's referred colloquially as the FRC box. And there's a reason why it's referred that way. First I'll show you the box. It's quite heavy. That's the box. And as you'll see on the side, it says Beatles, and then it says FRC. You can also see that there's a little bit of delamination on the box. It's quite heavy, it's a little bit unwieldy, and it has a tendency to be awkward to manage. And the weight distribution is odd at times. So I'm going to open the box. It's on the lid doesn't remove. It's on a hinge, so to speak, a cloth hinge. Maybe it's plastic. The first thing you see is a booklet. It looks like this. And on the back, the only thing it says is FRC. Now this was mail order only in 1973 from the famous record club, which was in Japan. The booklet actually is in the Japanese language. So you'll see the album titles, some of the album titles that are in there, but all the text besides the titles is in Japanese. There's 7 albums, 7 titles, 8 discs. I'll explain in a minute. As I said, it was mail order only. They're all stereo. Every one of them is stereo. They all refer to Capitol on the cover, but they are not on the Capitol label. So here's the first one, the early Beatles. You can see the Capitol reference up there. You can see the Capitol reference down here, which says they have pressing plants. I say pressing plants, as I say that, it says factories. Made in USA. Factories, Scranton, Pennsylvania, Los Angeles, California. I'm not sure why it says that, because you go over here and you can see that it's Plant 12. Plant 12 is Winchester, Virginia. And I did check the run out, and there is the Winchester symbol on there as well for all these albums. So they're all Winchester albums, and this is what they look like on the Apple label at the time. And you'll see that it says on the bottom of the record, it says manufactured by Apple Records. There's no reference to Capitol. There's no Capitol logo or any subsidiary or any of that stuff. It just says manufactured by Apple Records. So these are all the same vintage. They all would be stock albums from that moment in time. Here is Beatles' second album. This has the Gold Record Award symbol on it. I'm not sure why early Beatles didn't. Maybe it didn't go gold by 1973. It was released in 1965. It's possible that it didn't go gold by 1973. I don't actually know. I didn't look that up. Of course, the early Beatles album was sort of the Capitol version of the Introducing the Beatles album, in a sense, which was on VJ. And that album was, really Please Me, the UK album, with a few variations as well. So the early Beatles was the least likely album besides the Beatles Story, which wasn't really a music album. It was the least likely to actually have any pent-up demand for, because it was songs that everybody already had. And by 1965, it was really an oldies album. And they used the title, The Early Beatles. It really meant 2 years earlier, for the most part. Or even a year earlier in some cases. So anyway, Beatles' second album, which on Capitol, the second album means the one after Meet the Beatles. They did not include Meet the Beatles in this box. So here's the second album. I have these in poly sleeve with the rice paper backing. So these are they've never been played. The next one is Something New. Now, you might know that the Hard Day's Night soundtrack album in the U.S. was not on Capitol. It was on the United Artists label. But Capitol did put some songs from A Hard Day's Night on this album, Something New. And there, it says it right there. And there's the 5 songs. Now, the United Artists album, A Hard Day's Night soundtrack, came out almost simultaneous to this. It had famously or infamously had several instrumental tracks from the movie because it was considered to be a soundtrack album. So you had the George Martin instrumentation, of the, instrument only, non-vocal stuff, which, annoyed a lot of people. But a lot of people love that. They're happy to have that. And, of course, folks that are used to the UK album had a phenomenal album called A Hard Day's Night that had 14 songs on it, and none of them were the instrumentals from the movie. It's actually one of my favorite albums. It's just packed with all great Beatles hits from the time. Something New is a great album too. It's not the Hard Day's Night soundtrack album, and it's not the Hard Day's Night album, as the Beatles desired, from the UK. There's the Something New. Now, Help, as opposed to A Hard Day's Night, was on Capitol. And again, we got the Capitol full dimensional stereo. This one, for the first time, I don't remember seeing this elsewhere, but it says produced in England by George Martin and in the USA by Dave Dexter Jr. It says that right there. Dave Dexter Jr., again, to use the word famous or infamous, Dave Dexter Jr. was infamous for changing the actual sound of Beatles songs by adding reverb, by doing fake stereo and a variety of things that he thought would help the Beatles records sound more like American fans were expecting. So he felt that there was a need to add sound effects, reverb primarily, to make them sound a little better and more suitable to the U.S. audience. The only reference to Capitol on here is right here, rather than up there where the full dimensional stereo is. But then there's a reference to all the prior Capitol albums down here. So there's the Help album. Here's the Yesterday and Today album, which, as you know, came out in between Rubber Soul and Revolver, and it was kind of bastardized, if you will, set of songs that came off of different albums. It pulled some from the past and some from the future. Some say it ruined the American version of Revolver because it pretty much, pulled all of John's stuff, almost all of John's stuff off that album. Anyway, this is this originally, of course, was the Butcher album, and that didn't last long. If you see one in the wild and has the gold record stamp on it, of course, it's no matter what label variation it has, it's not going to be a Butcher under there because it was not gold when it came out, and the Butcher cover was only on there for a short period of time. So anyway, should be pretty obvious. And here is Yesterday and Today on that same Apple label. And then here is the U.S. version of Rubber Soul. Sorry. And this is the one that Americans prefer. I think it's maybe the only U.S. Capitol album that Americans prefer over the UK versions. The way the songs were selected for this album, and I'll show you the tracks there. While that would be foreign to your ears if you grew up with the UK version as Beatles intended, and you got this one as Dave Dexter intended, somehow he turned this into what people kind of think of as a folk album. And he picked, in his mind, songs that he thought fit together acoustically, instrumentally, and so on. And as an American, we kind of feel that he was right on this one, because it just this is the Rubber Soul that that we know, and it's just this also, by the way, is the version of Rubber Soul that Brian Wilson talked about as having influenced him so much that he went out to do Pet Sounds, and he felt he needed to top the Beatles, and then of course the Beatles needed to top him, and that was Sgt. Pepper. But anyway, I took a while for all of that to develop, and some people say he heard Revolver first. Some people say he heard the UK Rubber Soul first. There's not much mention of Revolver in the Brian Wilson discussions. It's always about Rubber Soul, Sgt. Pepper, and Pet Sounds. So anyway, there's the same apple. And then inexplicably, they jump over to the Blue Album. There's no reference or mention of the Red Album here. It was never a part of the set. This would have been new, I guess, at the time. But the Red and the Blue Album came out at the same time, and they came out in 1973. So this would have been new, but I'm not sure why they wouldn't have included the Red Album as well. It has the blue inner sleeves. It has the blue background around the green apple. And of course, this is a 2 LP set, so you get another one that looks just like it. Now, as I told you earlier, it gives credit on the back of most of these albums to Capitol's manufacturing plants in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and LA. But these are definitely all Winchester, Winchester, Virginia pressings. And I have not only verified the plant number, but I've also checked the dead wax, and the Winchester symbol is on every one of these records. So they were all produced physically in the Winchester plant, if you're curious about such things. I know several followers on my Facebook page, and just generally that I come across in the collector circles, they're very focused on where something was pressed. So, some people, collect all the plants. Some people only collect Scranton. Some people only collect LA. Some people only collect Winchester. Most people that even care about the pressing plant that I know of try to collect all of them. So anyway, these would have been produced under the jurisdiction of Apple, but by Capitol in the Winchester, Virginia plant. But as I showed you earlier, on the back of the albums, it actually says manufactured in Capitol factories, Scranton and LA. And then on the label at the bottom of the Apple, it says manufactured by Apple Records. So they're all Winchester. That's all I can tell you. So they're all stereo. They're all Capitol versions. They are all manufactured by Apple on the label. They're all Winchester. There are 7 titles on 8 LPs, as you saw. And it was mail order only in Japan, 1973, from the Famous Record Club. I had to look that up. I didn't know what FRC even meant. And it doesn't say Famous Record Club anywhere in this set. It says FRC in a couple of places, but it doesn't say Famous Record Club anywhere. So anyway, that's kind of an interesting box set. I have not played them, so I can't tell you that I know or I've heard any distinction from what I remember of the Capitol albums. They are definitely the Capitol versions, though, and they are the Dave Dexter versions to the degree that he influenced the sound. That sound is reflected here in these albums. A lot of subtle differences. The U.S. Help album has the James Bond kind of theme at the beginning of it. I don't believe that's on the UK version of Help. There's certain songs where you can really hear the extra reverb. I remember She's a Woman in particular as a single, just having so much more reverb. If you do an A/B side-by-side comparison of the U.S. version of She's a Woman, it sounds like Paul singing in the shower on the on the U.S. version, with their heavy reverb, unlike that. And there's other subtle cases where it's double tracked in the one country and it's single tracked in the UK or vice versa. So there's lots of subtle differences like that. On Rubber Soul, there's a false start on I'm Looking Through You, and that was left on the album. And that, we kind of all Americans all have that in their brain, frozen in their brain. When you listen to an album, a lot of times you start to hear the next song before it actually plays. And if it's not the one that you grew up with, it throws you off. So that's one of the big distinctions with Rubber Soul, US versus UK. And also when you get into these different versions where there's a James Bond thing, or there's a false start, or any other, oddity, I understand how that's sort of a mental speed bump for people when they're used to the canon as the Beatles intended version. And I absolutely understand that the UK versions are as the Beatles intended, and they oversaw to a large degree the mixing of those albums. So I know that they came out the way they wanted them to, and the US versions were the way Capitol wanted them to be for what they thought would work in the US market. So, having grown up in the U.S. market, my brain defaults to the U.S. versions, but I understand that the U.K. versions are the canon. Beatles' second album, Beatles Something New, these are, Yesterday and Today, these are not canon albums. I get them all here because these are all the U.S. versions. So anyway, that's a debate that goes on, and will go on for, the entire future, where people are still listening to Beatles records. There will be, or Beatles music, period. There'll be discussion about, well, what did the Beatles intend to have come out to the, audience, and what did they get in various parts of the world? And it's not just the U.S. There's lots of different variations, and there's albums with different tracks that are, that have come across 3 or 4 albums, and they wind up on one album in, some country. So, there's lots of variation around the world, but, if you want what the Beatles intended, you gotta get the UK stuff, obviously. Anyway, that's enough words for today, I guess. I wanted you to have a chance to see the FRC box if you hadn't seen it before. Maybe you've seen it, a picture of it, and you weren't sure what was in it. So, sometimes I just show something because I know a lot of people haven't had the chance to really take a look at it from, inside and out. I don't know how many of these were pressed or sold. I believe it's in the low thousands, but I don't know exactly, and it's not numbered. So there's no indication of, it's not number, 1,000 of 4,000 or anything like that. So that I can't tell you. Somewhere we could probably find that out, but in a little bit of research that I did about that, I was not able to figure out how many were produced. So anyway, that's all I have on this. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up. If you're not yet a subscriber, please hit the subscribe button. That'd be great to have you come back to see some more videos. And there's over 100 of them already in the tank here. So, if you're a subscriber, you can easily access all the other ones. I'll just tell you that I do have a Facebook page called My Beatles Collection. The YouTube channel is on air, My Beatles Collection, but the Facebook page is just My Beatles Collection. There's over 5,000 members there. It's a non-public, so it's a private, members only sort of a Facebook thing, a group, and you have to answer a few questions to get accepted in there. If you'd like to come over there, and love to have more membership over there. We share what we have. My Beatles Collection is your Beatles Collection. So I share my stuff, but I also hope that members share their stuff. You see a lot of interesting things. Yeah, you see a lot of, regular stuff too. People are proud of what they have. But it may be a box set, maybe like this one, or maybe, like the ones that are much higher volume in sales, like the black stereo box or the white mono box. if you've seen it once, you've seen it, and there's no point in seeing it over 100 times because 100 different people want to show you. But sometimes people they're proud of what they have and they want to show it. But you see a lot of unusual stuff too. See a lot of bootlegs. See a lot of stuff from different parts of the world that are quite different. Whether it's the cover that's different, the sound that's different, the song mix that's different. So that's kind of fun. Sometimes we talk about value, but the emphasis is not on price or value. It's more on content and just sharing what we have that somebody else might find to be interesting. So if you want to come over to the Facebook page, please come on over there. And again, it's My Beatles Collection, and you just try to sign up, and I'll see the request, and if you answer the questions and follow the rules, I'll let you in. So that's it for that. So that's it for today. Thanks for stopping by. I'll see you next time. Take care.